Talking baseball, baseball and the O's.
Oh, welcome back, Birdland, to another episode of the Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Benny Becker, thrilled as always, gang, to be back here in Camden County Studios talking to all of you about our Orioles. And we got some interesting topics today, gang, in our episode 56 early season Grindin. We're going to be talking about Zach Eflin's injuries, the baby birds bashing, Adley Rushman coming back into form, the O's bullpen situation at the moment, and a whole lot more. So we're going to dig into that in a second, but make sure you are checking out our new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Talkin Orioles Baseball. Also, episodes on YouTube. Make sure you're checking out all our content, gang. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, and we appreciate it. So let's jump into today's episode. Very excited to be getting into this one. We're going to start with recapping that Rangers series that we are coming off of games 4, 5, and 6 of this season. Did not start pretty in this series, gang. Game 1, we ultimately lost 5-2. Chris Bassitt gets his first Orioles start, and it was certainly one to forget about, gang. Ugly allowing one in the first and escaped a bases-loaded jam at the end of that inning. Also then allowed 3 in the second, and there was an incident on a little bounce back ball to Chris Bassitt. A nice easy play. You just flip it to the catcher, and he spiked it into the infield. Run scored. Chaos ensued. It was not fantastic, guys. Ultimately, though, he settled down after that second inning, ended up getting through 4 1/3, only giving up those 4 runs that happened in the first 2 innings. After the second, he only allowed a hit, a walk, and a hit by pitch. So still, guys were getting on, but only 1 an inning. And he was able to actually pitch like we expect Chris Bassitt to pitch. You could really see him getting mad. I mean, this is the type of guy that, even through spring training, since he became an Oriole, has been all about holding guys accountable, playing up to a championship standard, and certainly he did not give us that in his first Orioles start. We're expecting better things from him down the road. He is a veteran. He is a seasoned veteran, to say the least. And he's the type of guy that's going to not only give you innings, but should be able to give you quality innings. So I expect better results from Chris Bassitt. In that game, too, the Orioles offense had some moments, but ultimately the bats could not get going enough to come back in that game. Gunnar did hit his first home run of the season in the first inning, and Eanes and Garcia did shine in the bullpen after Bassitt left. Tyler Wells, though, had yet another rough outing. That is somebody who we're going to touch more on later this episode. So let's jump to game 2. Another loss, 8-5 this time. Kind of a shootout, if you will. There were 2 big storylines from this game. The first one is Zach Eflin leaving the game with an elbow injury. That's something we touched on already through social media videos, but also we will continue to touch on later this episode. But on a positive note, the positive storyline was Pete Alonso, the polar bear, hitting his first Orioles home run. First of many we all hope and expect. When you look at the lineup in that game too, it's funny. Before I get to that point, when you look at the lineup throughout this whole season, it seems like the middle or the bottom of the order has been doing the majority of the damage. Well, let's jump back to that game, too, because it's the exact opposite storyline. Our 1 through 3, Ward, Gunnar, Alonso, went 7 for 14 with a home run, 2 doubles, and all 5 of the Oriole RBIs. Meanwhile, lineup spots 4 through 9 that night went just a combined 3 for 22 with 1 walk and 8 strikeouts. So the top of the lineup was doing their thing and frankly kept us in that ball game. Unfortunately, the rest of the lineup could not come to play, did not pick us up when we needed it, and didn't do enough to get us that win. Last out also was with a man on. Again, we lost by 3, meaning the tying run was in the on deck circle. Again, just not being able to get the guys on or get the hits when we needed them. That was Gunnar Henderson who made the last out, who obviously had a great game that day. But you just wonder, if Gunnar can get on there, Pete Alonso comes up, who knows? It might have wound up a tie game. That's just how baseball works sometimes, gang. Let's go back to Zach Eflin for a second. He pitched 3 2/3 innings before getting hurt. Really was cruising in that start. 4 hits, 2 walks, but 7 strikeouts. Again, out of his 11 outs that he got, 7 of them were strikeouts, did allow an earned run, and he left 2 men on when he left the game. However, very well could have gotten out of that inning, like the reliever did get out of that inning. And ultimately, Zach Eflin may have had an absolute gem for us on the mound had he not gotten hurt. The bullpen came in, pitched the remaining 5 1/3 innings, and they got hit around, gang, clearly. 7 earned runs, 9 hits, 1 walk, 4 Ks. Definitely the worst day for this bullpen. Another topic that we will cover slightly later in this episode. Every reliever who pitched in that game gave up at least 1 earned run. All 4 of them: Wolfram, Cano, Geraldo, and Nunez. Ultimately, again, the Orioles, top of their lineup, is able to produce, but we do not get enough. We fall short again, 8-5 in that game. Going into game 3, trying to avoid the sweep, and luckily these Orioles did. The offense came to play once again, this time winning 8-3. The O's offense really came out early and often. They put up 2 in the second, 2 in the third, 3 in the fifth, and 1 in the sixth. The young O's also hit some home runs, with Samuel Basallo and Dylan Beavers each hitting their first home run of the season. They were smashing the ball around all day. You want to talk topics that we're going to talk about later? Those 2 guys are another topic that we will touch on later. Believe that, gang. So, ultimately, in that game, another storyline that was big was Trevor Rogers, his second start of the season. Definitely looked better on his command. Game 1, it was a little touch and go, that command. This time seemed a little more on the ball. And he ultimately pitched 6 innings, 6 hits, 1 walk, 3 Ks, and 2 earned runs. They got those 2 runs in the second, I believe, or fourth, whatever it may have been, gang. The innings eluding me. Either way, he did get out of a 2-out jam in that. He gave up 4 straight singles. That's when the 2 runs scored, but really worked out of it without allowing any more damage, and then cruised the rest of his start. So Orioles ultimately dropped their first series of the year, moved to 3-3 on the season. Not exactly where you want it, gang, but listen, starting hot was never necessary for this team to rebound off of last season. You don't have to start 5-1 to make the playoffs in baseball. It's a very long season. Starting 3-3 is more than acceptable. And ultimately, you want to see some better performances, even in the good games. You still see this offense kind of sometimes slugging, sometimes not. This pitching sometimes living up to it and pitching well, sometimes faltering and not. And that's both starters and bullpen. The defense has been solid, I will say, but could be better. There are certain moments that you want to see cleaned up. Ultimately, though, at 3-3, canvas is still wide open for these Orioles to paint the picture of what this season's going to be. Now let's move on maybe to the biggest news in Birdland right now, which is that Zach Eflin injury. We already touched on it. We already had social media video on it. So I'm not going to necessarily dig in for a long time, but we're still awaiting the test results from the Orioles on Zach Eflin's right elbow. It has an ominous feel to it. Albernez's quotes didn't sound great. Quote, you just feel for him. The heart hurts for him. That's not necessarily something a manager would come out and say right after the game if they didn't fear the worst. If they thought, hey, he's going to be on the shelf for 2 weeks and come back, then I don't think you would be saying my heart hurts for him. You'd be saying, yeah, it's tough luck. He's, worked so hard to get back from last year's injuries that it stinks, but I think he'll be okay. These have a much more ominous tone to it, and it just seems like a matter of hours until we hear Zach Eflin's out for the season and getting Tommy John surgery. I will say, though, the longer that the Orioles go without saying something gives me a bit of hope because they are the type of team, just look at Keegan Aiken, where they're not going to necessarily tell you how bad an injury is. They want to keep everything close to the vest. They want to keep this information to themselves when they can. And certainly a guy going getting Tommy John surgery, that information is going to get out. So maybe, who knows, maybe the Orioles are going to look to do kind of what they did with Jordan Westburg, which is the placement-rich injections in the elbow. Hope that maybe he takes to that and is able to rehab and come back this season without the surgery. Either way, I'm not necessarily the most optimistic, gang. I have the feeling we lost Zach Eflin for the year after not even 4 innings, which really stinks. Because Eflin was pitching great this whole spring training, pitching great in that 3 2/3 innings that he threw. So it's beyond disappointing to lose Zach Eflin already at this point. And it really creates a domino effect with this Orioles roster. And that's pretty much what we're going to get into next. We're going to talk about the domino effect, emphasis on the O, as always, the domino effect of the Zach Eflin injury, and pretty much assuming that he's probably done for the season. So we know instantly that Albert Suarez was the immediate replacement, but that was just on the roster, not in the rotation. In fact, Albert already pitched, had a 3 inning save. I think it was his first save in 2 to 3 years for the Orioles in that last game of the Rangers series. And that, more than anything, signifies to you that the Orioles are not looking at Albert Suarez to make starts, not at least at this moment. Now, there is the possibility that they look at Albert as a potential starter. And when I mean that, I don't mean your traditional starter. I mean like a starter, and then he pitches for 3 4 innings, and then another guy comes in and piggybacks that start. I could see that possibility, but we're really not going to get an answer, I don't think, until the Orioles truly need that fifth starter. That's either going to come on Monday or Tuesday of next week. And that's when the Orioles pretty much have to make a decision. Is it going to be a piggyback start with Suarez and possibly Tyler Wells, let's say? Or is it going to be a Dean Kramer call-up? Now, there is the little tidbit, the little twist, that technically Dean Kramer can't be called up until April 9th, definitely after Monday or Tuesday, unless there's a corresponding injury where somebody on the Major League roster hits the IL and they're able to bring up a replacement for that guy. Now, right now, there's no injury. And frankly, you don't want a real injury to occur, obviously. To me, it makes the most sense that if the Orioles were to look to bring up Dean Kramer for that start when that time comes, a reliever who's somewhat struggling, maybe let's say Geraldo, might mysteriously find a way to hit that IL. Just have arm fatigue or shoulder strain or something along those lines where the Orioles say, hey, we're just going to put you on the shelf for a couple weeks because you didn't start off that great. We want to kind of work through some things down in Sarasota again with you. And that way they can bring Dean Kramer up. So that's the whole question of who's going to be that fifth starter. I truly believe it will be Dean Kramer. Will we have to wait until April 9th or later until Dean Kramer enters the rotation? In which case the Orioles probably use Suarez and Wells or another guy to kind of piggyback this start? Or is it just going to be Dean Kramer? Or frankly, is it going to be another name like Cade Povich or Brandon Young? Because there are options. Obviously, Dean Kramer seems like the obvious choice, but we also aren't necessarily seeing and hearing everything the Orioles are. So in their world, they could want to still work on something with Dean Kramer more than maybe Cade Povich or Brandon Young for whatever reason at this moment. I don't believe that to be the case. The Orioles and Elias talked about how difficult a decision it was to send Dean down to the minors, ultimately judging it to be the best for the team as a whole to keep him as a starter. Well, now's the time that we need a starter. So, again, I think there will be a corresponding IL move, probably one of those mid relievers that are struggling. However, we'll see. The other domino effect of this whole thing is the idea that just a week or two, the Orioles may have wanted to implement a 6-man rotation. Now, that was in the thought of, hey, we have Dean in the minors, adding Dean as the 6th man would really make this look good. So now I wonder if, now that Cade Povich or Brandon Young, or possibly one of these other young names, now becomes the 6th guy, now I wonder if the Orioles start second-guessing the idea of a 6-man rotation in a week, 2 weeks, whenever they judge in their schedule, because they have a few longer stretches without an off day coming up in the next month, month and a half. And really, it all starts on that April 9th date that Dean Kramer could be brought up without an injury designated somebody else. Okay? So, I am an optimistic guy. I like to say, my friends say I'm the most optimistic person I know. You'll probably hear me talk about the Orioles and think he is way too optimistic in every capacity, speaking with his heart. I'm just an eternal optimist. I like to look at myself more as a realist, but sometimes in these crappy situations, like this Zach Eflin injury, you have to look at the glass half filled. You have to find the positive takeaway in this moment. So the positive takeaway to me is ultimately that the Orioles were always going to have to need this starting pitching depth. Every team does. So coming into the year, I talked about how Dean Kramer, Cade Povich, even Brandon Young, or some of these other options are so important to be able to be successful at this level, at least to an average standard. I don't need them being Tariq Skubal, Paul Skeens. I just need them to be an MLB average starting pitcher when we need them to make that start, or even in the bullpen. So the idea of them just constantly working in the minors and then having to come in those pressure situations later in the year and then needing them to provide us that success, I think is more of a gamble than the idea of having Dean Kramer in the rotation already a week into the season. That having maybe Cade Povich or Brandon Young or one of these other guys jump in the rotation at times to make a 6th start is going to give them valuable experience. Now, I know Dean Kramer has a ton of major league experience, but still, gang, every year's its new year, right? Every season's a new season. So gaining some momentum and experience in the majors in that season is going to be more beneficial to these guys down the stretch, late in the summer, towards the playoffs, into the playoffs, and hopefully allows them a better opportunity to succeed in those spots for us when they're in those pressure spots. So again, is it a positive? No. I would love to have Zach Eflin in this rotation. And does it stink that we have to use at least one, if not two, of our depth bullets already this early into the season? Yeah, it's brutal, gang. But even in the worst days, you can still find some sunshine. And I want to believe that that is the area which can be beneficial to this club down the road, even if Zach Eflin is done for the year. And here's to hoping they find nothing. That it was just, seemed scary in the moment, but turned out to be nothing. Or again, a very minor tear that hopefully can get fixed, or an injection that helps it fix, and that Eflin's able to pitch through it and be successful this year. Either way, it's a real gut check, gang, losing Zach Eflin, because having him at the back end of this rotation really made it all the more scary, gang. We loved when they brought in Zach Eflin 2 years ago. We were crushed when he got hurt in that season after starting so hot for us. Last season, he was pretty much banged up the whole year, and definitely when he came back was not 100%. So now I worry, even if he is able to come back, is he not 100%? Does that give us kind of what we got last year from him, which was not beneficial? So we'll see, gang. I got my fingers crossed that Zach Eflin can find his way out of this healthy and be able to pitch successfully for us this season. All right, so let's jump to a little happier topic, because that was a little depressing start to the show, gang. All right, so we're going to now talk about how we got some baby birds bashing. Samuel Basallo and Dylan Beavers each hitting their first home run of the season in that series finale against Texas. Not only were they hitting the ball out of the park, but they were just smashing the ball when it comes to exit velocities. Each of them having 3 hard hit balls on the day. Each of them having a single, obviously that home run, and a fly out on those 3 hard hit balls. So they weren't all hits, but they were all hit very hard. Basallo had a single go 107.7 exit velocity. His fly out went 378 feet, gang, and had an exit velocity of 103.7. And his home run went 437 with an EV of 1095, almost a 110 plus laser by Samuel Basallo. Just so impressive by this young kid. Meanwhile, Dylan Beavers' single went for 101.3, home run went for 103.8, and his flyout was just 97.3. Either way, all 6 of them were hard hit balls. And gang, these are some tremendously talented players who are up for Rookie of the Year this year. Still technically both rookies. Just balling out at the major league level. Basallo this season has reached base in 4 of his 5 games that he's played. Beavers, meanwhile, has a batting average of .286 this season. These two are now major pieces of this young core. Obviously, Basallo has been in name for a couple years and has been financially since last August when they signed that extension. But now, he's essentially an everyday player for us, gang. And Dylan Beavers would be too, if not for Ward and O'Neill also being kind of that everyday type player. I know fans are very critical that we're still playing Tyler O'Neill a lot and want Dylan Beavers an every single day player. I still like Tyler O'Neill. I like switching it up with the righty-lefty platoon with those 2 guys. I think it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense, and it's going to lead to success for both of them and this team. I also expect for Basallo and Beavers to both continue to elevate their game and their performance this season. So naturally, I would not be surprised if one or both are towards or at the top of Rookie of the Year voting for the American League this year. I know I have money on each of them winning the award. And frankly, I'm liking my chances, gang, because they're that talented. Beavers and Paseo, the killer bees, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in Baltimore for quite some time. You gotta love it, gang. Another thing you gotta love is our next topic, which is Adley is back. Adley Rushman has been on base in every game he's played this season. That includes a game he only pinch hit in one at bat, and it was a huge double off the wall, nearly a home run. He's fourth in baseball right now in doubles with 3 already on this young season. Doesn't have a home run yet, but like I just said, has come just inches shy of them this season, so they certainly will be coming soon. He has a slash line of 286 batting average, 412 on base percentage, slugging 500 with an OPS of 912. Adley Rushman feels like his old self again, and that is a beautiful, beautiful thing, gang. He's the Adley we all knew and loved, and it feels like we're getting that back. The organization obviously still believes in him to a very high level. Every single game he's played in, he's batted in that 4-hole cleanup spot in the lineup. That is not a spot that the Orioles have to put him in. They have a lot of other players that they could certainly put in that 4-hole if they were not as confident that Adley Rushman is going to have this bounce back season. And we talked about it and called it coming into the year. I love that it's here. I love that we're seeing it. I feel like Adley does usually get off to a hot start. Going into opening day, I told my friend John, I said, Adley to me always has a good opening day. Again, I didn't look into the stats before I said that. Haven't looked into the stats since I said that. So, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. But I have a feeling that Adley Rushman has done very well on opening day in his career, and typically carries that at least into the first couple weeks. Hopefully, Adley Rushman can get back to his old self and carry this success throughout the entire season, gang. All right, so let's jump back into kind of more uncomfortable conversation. Maybe not so high hopes and riding high sort of talk. We're going to talk about bullpen blips. A lot of people have been critical about this bullpen so far this season, and rightfully so. They have been touch and go, to say the least. Very hit or miss, literally. It's the type of bullpen that when you look at some of their numbers, you're like, don't look that bad. But when you group them all together, you see some extreme highs and extreme lows. And we're going to touch on that. First, I'm just going to break down the mixed bag, which has been the Orioles bullpen. Again, it's just 6 games, so it'll take me a second, all right? In game 1, they only pitched 2 innings. They gave up 2 hits, no walks, 4 strikeouts, 1 earned run. Game 2, 4 1/3 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 6 Ks, only 1 earned run. Game 3, 3 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 5 walks, 8 Ks, 2 earned runs. Game 4, 4 2/3 innings, 3 hits, 1 walk, 8 Ks, 1 earned run. Game 5, 5 1/3 innings, 9 hits, 1 walk, 4 Ks, 7 earned runs. And then in the last game, game 6, 3 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 2 Ks, 1 earned run. That was actually just Albert Suarez. He was the only guy to pitch after the starter, Trevor Rogers, in game 6. All right, so as a combined total, I just threw a lot of numbers at you. Okay, so let's break it down, group it all together, okay? The bullpen so far this season has pitched 23 innings. They've given up 23 hits, 9 walks, 32 strikeouts, and 13 earned runs. So the 13 earned runs, let's hit that first. Because that also includes Albert Suarez last game, giving up just one through his 3 innings. Okay, so positive momentum, moving in the right direction after the last game with Albert. Still, the bullpen ERA is sitting at 5.09. Not good. Definitely not where it needs to be. If that's over the course of the season, we're sitting as one of the worst bullpens in baseball. And also remember, Ryan Helsley has been great for us so far this year. Not that he hasn't given up a run, I think he has, but ultimately he's still been tremendous for us. On a positive note, though, our bullpen has a Ks per 9 cumulatively of 12.52, which was that. If that was a person, that would be beyond elite. As a bullpen is very good, gang. So we have the strikeout stuff. Now, again, you might be able to thank Ryan Helsley for some of those numbers, but we have guys who can strike guys out. That is for sure. Meaning we have talent in this bullpen. The whip is sitting at 1.39 in total for the entire bullpen. Not terrible by any means. Certainly maybe slightly higher than you'd like. But as long as you're under that 1.5, I feel like, statistically speaking, you're doing pretty well. Because you're then averaging just one guy getting on base in the majority of the innings. Right? So, there's a mixed bag when you look at this Orioles bullpen. And frankly, I feel like it's not nearly as bad as some fans are making it out to be. And frankly, I feel it's not as bad as my own eyes tell me. Because my eyes have been telling me what your eyes have been telling a lot of you. That this Orioles bullpen has not been good. And yet, by the numbers, you can find some good. You can find some things that it's not that bad. And you can certainly find something or a couple things that are bad. Now, ultimately, though, if you're keeping guys mostly off base, again, a whip of 1.39, and you're striking out a lot of guys, a Ks per 9 of 12.52, then to me, it would make sense that that ERA will just naturally decrease. Now, the outlier, obviously, is that 5th game. That was their worst game. Again, they pitched 5 1/3, 9 hits, 1 walk, 4 Ks, 7 earned runs. But that just so happens to also be the game where they pitched the most in. And also coming off of a couple games where they had to eat some innings because the starters did not go that deep into the game. And that's been one of the problems early, is that other than Rodgers, our starters really haven't been able to go deep into games yet this season. Another thing about that 5th game is that was the game Eflin got hurt. So just mentally, it's one of these games that this bullpen didn't expect to pitch for another inning or 2. And then, in the blink of an eye, you're now on the mound. Again, they got out of that inning with 2 men on without allowing a run. It wasn't until after that the game sort of fell apart. But again, we're maybe throwing guys who we hope to give the day off to because of the situation we were put in. Also considering this bullpen right now is missing 2 key pieces. Frankly, potentially the 2 setup men for this bullpen in Keegan Aiken and Andrew Kittredge. Now, Aiken we still haven't really gotten any word on. I can't tell you when even we should hope to see Keegan Aiken again. I'm hoping at some point this season. Now, Andrew Kittredge, as we'll mention later, is already having his rehab assignment. So, sooner rather than later is when Kittredge will be back. Ultimately, though, we are missing 2 of maybe the biggest pieces outside of Ryan Helsley and Felix Bautista. Could be much worse, and I expect it to be better. So, like, the idea of missing those two key pieces, really three pieces if you want to lump Batista in, the idea of missing those guys right now, there's a chance it could have been a whole heck of a lot worse, gang. And like I said, if you just think of it as we really haven't been allowing that many men on base, and we've been striking out a ton of guys, I would imagine for the earned run average to just naturally decrease over a larger sample size. And not only do I expect the bullpen to be better with their performances, I also anticipate the starters to be better getting a little deeper into games. Listen, we're not talking about going 8, 9 innings. We're talking, though, about consistently getting into that fifth inning. And I don't even need you to finish off that fifth inning. But I just think that that's kind of this key number. As long as you pitch 4 1/3, 4 2/3, you're giving just half the game to the bullpen. If you're asking the bullpen to pitch more than half the game, one, you're probably behind already, or there's an injury, like in Eflin's case. But also, you're just not really setting them up for success. Because now either we have to pitch everybody in the bullpen, or some guys have to go more than an inning, which is when relievers tend to potentially start slipping and losing some stuff. Because that's not what most of them do. Most of them are a 1 inning and done kind of guy. And if they have to, they'll give you an extra couple batters. But sometimes that gets you into trouble. And ultimately, if you can pitch at least into the fifth, that at least sets you up to be able to get through the rest of the game with only 3 or maybe even 4 relievers just pitching mainly that inning. Maybe coming in for 1 or 2 batters in a situation to get you out of that fifth inning. This is going to basically prove to be a pivotal part of this Orioles season. But, again, glass half full Benny half full. Giving these fringe relievers this opportunity right now will actually allow us to find the guys who we can rely on in this pen. Right? Like a player, let's say, like Anthony Nunez, who didn't even expect to be on the opening day roster. Frankly, we thought that he was not going to make Major League Camp. And a Jackson Kowar instead would be on this roster. Well, it doesn't matter whether it was Kowar or Nunez for this point. The point is that this is a guy who didn't even expect necessarily this opportunity and now has the opportunity in front of him. And if he can be successful and reliable, there are jobs open. Like, we can find a spot for you. But also, we're going to see who can cut it and who maybe can't cut it. And listen, just because you can't cut it right now doesn't mean you cannot be successful for us later. Let's look at Geraldo. Again, we talked about the possibility that since he hasn't started off great, the Orioles might find an injury to move him on the IL to bring up Dean Kramer. Well, that's possible. And then there's going to come a point in July or August where we have to bring him up. We need a reliever, and we're going to bring up Geraldo. And all these fans are going to go, oh, he was terrible. He was horrible for the first 2 weeks of the season. Why are we bringing him up? And watch how often those guys come back and are really successful. That's the funny thing. So this is giving everybody the opportunity, not just to be successful right now, but down the road, even if you fail right now, gives you the opportunity to learn, get the experience, to then go work on some things, and when you come back, then you can be successful. So ultimately, gang, I'm not worried about the bullpen like a lot of you are right now. But I also see what you see. I get it. It's been a little touch and go, a little hit or miss, a little ugly at times. There's been some blips, both positive and negative. So we'll see where this bullpen takes us. Again, I naturally expect those numbers to get better just simply by the underlying metrics. Also, I expect it to get better when we get Andrew Kittredge and then Keegan Aiken back from injury. I also do believe fully that a bullpen is the easiest part of a team to improve on throughout the season. At some point, there's going to be teams wanting to trade away some guys. Teams that are kind of in the dumps. They always have an interesting bullpen arm or two. There are always interesting relievers out there to get. Heck, last season the Orioles traded 3, 4, 6, who knows how many. I mean, we traded Sir Anthony, we traded Cano, or not Cano, we traded Gregory Soto, we traded Kittredge. We traded multiple relievers last year, and there will be those same guys this year that other teams are trading. So if we get to a spot where, let's say Keegan Aiken isn't coming back healthy, let's say that we need a new lefty in the pen because one or both of these lefties aren't performing. Let's say that all of these guys we gave opportunities to are failing. You can go out and buy a new bullpen, gang. So I'm not that worried. And there is some serious talent here. Look no farther than how many strikeouts they get. They just need to put it all together. They need to find the guys who are going to be consistently reliable for us this season. That's all it is, gang. That's all it is. And I think eventually we're going to do that. And this bullpen will be at least average this year with a very good close, maybe great closer on the back end. Which, frankly, you can get away with again for a while. And probably will need to then add to at the trade deadline. Now, one of the relievers that I'm most disappointed in this season is my guy Tyler Wells. If you've been listening to us since we started, you know I am a huge believer in Tyler Wells, whether it be as a starter, a reliever. Heck, there were days where I was preaching he should be the closer. Now I'm not saying that, but I still believe he can be a very reliable, quality bullpen piece. Unfortunately, though, he's allowed an earned run in all 3 of his appearances so far this season. Now, when you hear him talk about it, when you hear the coaching staff talk about it, everybody seems happy with his stuff. It just seems like his control has been lacking so far this season. And there could be an easy excuse for that, gang. So, in the last 4 years, out of his 55 appearances, 50 of them have been starts. This is a guy who had broken into the majors as a reliever, but since then had really just worked as a starter almost the entire time. And it's going to take him a little bit of time, I think, to readjust to that bullpen life. And it is different, gang. As a scheduled starter, you know when you're due up next, you know going to the field, you know waking up, you know the entire day. As a bullpen guy, you might not know until 5 minutes before you go in. You might be told before the game. It's just this thing you always have to be on your toes. You always have to be ready unless you've been told you are down tonight. But the only way you're down tonight is if you really put in work the day or 2 or even 3 before that. So it's going to take him a little bit of time to get reacquainted to this bullpen life. None of his appearances have really gotten away from him any, but he's also really towed the line. He allowed 4 guys to reach in his second appearance. He allowed 3 guys to reach in his third appearance. Again, he's given up no more than 1 earned run, but no less than 1 earned run every single outing so far this season. Some of those games could have gotten away from him, and they didn't. So that's a positive sign that he is right there. Now, when you look at his arsenal, his fastball velocity actually is ticking up and seems to be increasing. As the season goes on, we expect it to go from this 95, 96 range to even maybe push 97, 98 potentially. He's really, though, been leaning heavily on his off-speed pitches this season. I would assume that that's kind of this pitching staff and the new guys coming in, kind of tweaking with some stuff or wanting him to focus on certain things. Maybe it's the situations and the guys he was facing that is the reason. Again, small sample size. You can't always pick out exactly why somebody's doing something. Ultimately, I would say this is not the time to panic when it comes to Tyler Wells just now, but certainly something to look out for. Again, I'm a big Tyler Wells believer, and I think that he's going to get it right and be extremely reliable for us. But he was a guy that, especially with Kittredge hurt, was all but being handed the setup role. And he kind of fumbled the bag. And again, none of these appearances truly got away from him, but two of the three, he was toeing that line. And all three, he let up a run in, which is something you cannot have from a lockdown reliever. Is every single time he comes out, someone scores. That's no good. So we'll see with Tyler Wells, something to keep an eye on. I'm, of course, still a big Tyler Wells stan. And I'll stand by him, gang. I'll pound the table that Taylor Wells is going to get it right sooner rather than later. And he's going to be a big piece of this bullpen moving forward. Just another reason I'm bullish on this bullpen's numbers improving is a guy like Tyler Wells. Is a guy that I think has started off slow, and I expect to put in better results as the season progresses. Now, we mentioned Andrew Kittredge. He's one of two Orioles rehabbing right now in AAA. Jackson Holliday is, of course, the big name. He's now played 3 games down in AAA rehabbing. His first 2 were not great, but his third one was. It looks like we're starting to get Jackson Holliday back up to speed. You know, it's just this bone in his hand, so physically you expect him to be exactly fine. Exactly who we expect him to be. And it's all about timing at this point as far as Jackson goes. Getting in the reps, getting your timing back. In that third game, he went 2 for 3 with a double and a walk. Again, we're not just expecting Jackson back in the next week or two. We're expecting the real, authentic, full Jackson Holliday in the next week or two. So that's very exciting because that's yet another piece in this lineup that can create damage anytime he comes up. And his speed and contact ability really gives us a nice little piece in this lineup that maybe we're not missing, but certainly we'll be happy to add. Kittredge just had his first rehab appearance. Wasn't pretty. Only got 2 guys out. Gave up 2 hits, a walk, got a strikeout. It was not pretty, gang. But again, his first rehab assignment. You would hope that he progresses and gets better moving forward with the more he rehabs down in AAA. And as long as he's feeling healthy, we're going to get him back at some point sooner rather than later. I'm still worried that maybe there's this potential the Orioles are like, hey, he kind of had this dead arm. That's why we pushed him back, why we put him on IL. Now, maybe we're just going to throw him out there and hope that it feels better. And I haven't heard really any word. So I'm hoping that that dead arm feeling is gone and that he's able to be back to himself. The worry is that it's not gone and the Orioles are like, hey, let's just see if we can push you through this. We'll see, gang. So I'm not expecting Andrew Kittredge in the next week, but certainly at some point this month, I expect us to get him back in this bullpen. And that's going to be a positive thing. Yet another reason to be bullish about the Orioles bullpen. So the next topic is going to be about how Gunnar Henderson and an extension apparently, and it's not shocking, is, quote, extremely low. I believe it was Keith Law was talking about it the other day on MLB Network. And listen, we knew that. We were just talking contract extensions the other day. And while we think there's some more maybe down the pipeline coming soon, and certainly Gunnar Henderson's the name that we would absolutely all love to hear, might not be realistic, gang. Ultimately, we know he's a Boras client. They tend to hit the open market. The Orioles would probably have to pay a number that doesn't even make sense right now. Gunnar still has 2 more arbitration years after this one. I think he's making about $9 million this year. So assuming he just has the same season he had last year, he's going to be pushing double digits. And if he puts together a season like he had 2 years ago, he could be pushing 15 plus million for that next year, maybe even pushing 20 something million the year after that. So, from the Orioles standpoint, if we're already going to have to pay him in the 30s and the 40s or whatever it may be, why not just enjoy the couple years that we get to pay him less? Truly. Obviously, you'd love to get him locked up to an 8-year deal, make sure it happens, and if he was willing, that'd be great. I just don't see the reality. I think he would love to hear the number. I think he would be interested in seeing the offer. I'd be shocked if there was really any realistic number that the Orioles could put in front of him that he would agree to. Ultimately, it would probably even have to be below market value, which I can't see Boras wanting to do, and I can't see Gunnar wanting to give up on. Listen, when you're already making like $9 million or whatever it may be, unless you're worried about this new CBA, I don't know why Gunnar wouldn't just bet on himself. Truly. Ultimately, though, the Orioles going out and finding other members of this young core to lock up will eventually, hopefully, motivate Gunnar to sign long term here. Even if it means waiting for Gunnar to hit free agency. If all the guys that he knows, he loves, he's come up with, are essentially all still here, it's a brotherhood that I don't think he's going to want to break. Even more so if this team gets back to its winning ways and come 3 years, when Gunner's a free agent, we've won a lot, we've locked up this core, and he's now the last piece of the core to lock up. I think he'd find that very attractive. And I believe he would be very willing to sign a long-term deal with us if all his buddies are still here. And again, those buddies have to be playing well. His buddies have to live up to it themselves. Not just going to keep his friends on the team to keep him. But ultimately, if we can have a winning product on the field and they're all buddies, the best of the bunch will probably want to re-sign and stay with those buddies and continue winning. Maybe they have a World Series by them. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're still chasing it. Ultimately, I think that's the key to keeping Gunnar Henderson down the road, is locking up these guys that he really likes. The Kausers, the Adleys, the Westberg, the Jackson, the Beavers. Like this young core that they all love each other and they have fun and they enjoy it. That would be big to keeping Gunnar as a Baltimore Oriole. All right, gang. Moving towards the very end, coming to the end of this episode, we're going to preview real quick the Pirates series. Orioles headed to Pittsburgh, probably already there. And we're starting game 1 tomorrow on Friday against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Game 1 is going to be Kyle Bradish versus Mitch Keller. Bradish had an okay first start, but definitely looking to get deeper into the game and continue being successful. Mitch Keller can be all right. I don't mind Mitch Keller by any means, so he's not a guy that you can just walk all over. But certainly these Orioles could put a hurting on him in the right situation. Game 2, Shane Baz, another guy who I think is looking to do better than he did in that Game 1. Certainly looking to go deeper than he did in his first Orioles start. He's going to be going up against Carmen Mlodzinski. That's a tough name. Anytime you start a last name with an M followed with an L, your brain starts going, I don't know what to do with this. Uh, I don't even know what to tell you about the kid. I can tell you Shane Baz, I expect a lot from this season. So hopefully we see a better start from Shane Baz in this start. And Chris Bassett, definitely a guy that we need to see a better start from starting in Game 3. He's going to be going against Braxton Ashcroft. Just a good name, Braxton Ashcroft. And not to go back to that other name, Carmen Mlodzinski. I mean, if that last name doesn't scream Pittsburgh to you, you might not know Pittsburgh, gang. Mlodzinski. I mean, that is a last name that was born in a Pittsburgh dream, gang. Now, the real story coming into this series is number 1 prospect in baseball, Connor Griffin, for the Pirates, getting the call up. Of course he would get the call up against us. Why wouldn't he get the call up against us? Well, hopefully takes him at least 3 games to get going in his MLB career, because he seems like he could be a special player along the lines of like a Gunner, a Bobby Witt, those type of players. Pittsburgh may have themselves one of those absolute gems in Connor Griffin. And again, I just hope it takes him 3 games to get going. Or frankly, he's the only one in the lineup that can hit. That's all I gotta hope. We're very lucky that we get to miss Paul Skeens. He pitched yesterday. So we get to skip Skeens Day, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's little breaks like that in a season that give you the vibe of like, this, I think, is going to be our year. Again, maybe not to win it all. I think we're going to win it all. I have a lot of money on it. That's why, and I think that's why I have it. But neither here or there. I just mean, like, things are going to break our way this year. And something like that last year would not have happened. We're going to face Skeens. We face Scoople, I feel like, every time we face the Tigers. Like, it was just, we were facing Garrett Crochet every time we saw the Red Sox. We were facing these elite guys every go around, and sometimes in baseball you get lucky. That's part of the game. And missing Paul Skeens in your 3 games is certainly something to feel lucky about. We're going to have a reunion with Ryan O'Hearn and Gregory Soto in this series. Both are Pirates. O'Hearn's having himself a nice start to his Pirates career. Not surprised. We know Herney is a fantastic ball player, real hard-nosed guy. We love Ryan O'Hearn. We miss Ryan O'Hearn. There's just not the spot on the roster for him. There's not even spots on the rosters for all the guys we want on the roster, gang. So Ryan O'Hearn, unfortunately, was one of those guys we shipped away last year and let sign elsewhere this offseason. But I'm glad he started off hot, and I hope he does really well for himself. And whether it's the Pirates that have a good season and he's a leading force, or he winds up getting traded again and he helps a contender. Who knows? If crazy things happen, it could be us. Who knows? I honestly hope that's not the case, because I don't want crazy injuries anymore in this Orioles world. Let me not put that into the universe. Okay, end of the show, gang. Moving forward to our last topic. You know we like to end on a light note, end on something fun. Well, what's more fun than the Orioles doing something nobody else has ever done, which is ending a game with an ABS challenge. Sambo Basayo tapped the cap on the ball that turned into a strike, that caused a strikeout, that ended the game. So for the first time in Major League Baseball history, guaranteed, the Orioles won a game. And anyone won a game with an ABS challenge. Certainly, Texas wasn't thrilled. The Orioles thought it was pretty cool. Texas, kind of was like it was lame. Whatever. I can see that. We're on the right side of it, so we had fun, and it was cool. Orioles, though, have been one of the best teams in baseball when it comes to ABS challenges so far this year. 12 for 14 on the season, and really 12 of 13 after their first challenge was not successful. Paseo in opening day game tapped the helmet while at bat and was wrong about a pitch that he struck out on, ended up staying a strikeout. That was the first challenge by the O's all year. Since then, they've gone 12 for 13. The only one that got it wrong was also Paseo behind the plate. But listen, that's okay. I want him taking shots in the right moments. And this time, to end the game, he took the right shot. He had two to play with. They said, why not? There was a pitch earlier in the inning that they kind of was like, you could have challenged that if you wanted. Don't worry. Don't fear going after it. And in this one, he turned an Albert Suarez ball into a Suarez strike. That was a strikeout that ended the game for the first time ever, gang. The game ends on an ABS challenge. And just like that, our episode will end as well. It's a fantastic episode. We had a blast. I can't wait for this Pirate series. I think we could easily take 2, if not all 3, from Pittsburgh in this series, gang. So very excited. After that, we go to Chicago to take on the White Sox. So these next 6 games could be really, really fun to watch for Orioles fans. Let's hope, gang. Let's hope we dominate some of the worst teams in baseball over the past forever. All right, gang. So we're going to wrap it up with that. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in, and let's go O's.
Talking